There's been some updates to my add-on Surfice Stable Fractal Dithering, which, in case you don't know, what it does is as stuff moves further and closer to the camera, it draws more or less etching lines or halftone pattern on them, so they're never too big or too small for you to see. This process was invented by a guy called Runevision and brought to Blender by myself. And now it takes into account how wide angle your camera is, which means that it now works alongside my other add-on Perspective Trickster. And there's more, it also works in full colour, which you're not seeing in this demo, and it does cross-hatching. And what's more, it does cross-hatching with bricks, which it does sensibly, like the vertical and horizontal lines of the hatching. It chooses the one that you would choose to do with your pen. And to show it off, I've recreated an artwork by possibly the greatest perspective trickster of them all, MC Escher. If you have a Blender Assets folder set up, you can just drop the blend into that, and then when you go to the asset library, you will find, amongst everything else, a whole lot of SSFD textures, such as this one. Let's see how they work. So here we go. This is how all of them are set up. They've basically got mapping going into SSFD, mapping focal length into two textures, which are identical, by which I mean all of these are identical. Then it goes into texture A and through into texture B, and mix between text goes through. And here we have a load of settings that we can adjust, such as darkness and contrast and scale. And finally, we have Fresnel factor, which is a little bit more confusing. So rather than a surface being like sort of facing towards you, let's turn contrast down a bit so we can see what we're doing a bit better. Now, if it's facing like sort of at an angle to you, edge onto the camera, you may want to lower the resolution of the texture for that. So we've got some options there, or you may like to turn it off. This is the simplest one. The next one is similar, but whereas the last one was pixels, this is newsprint. It's actually even the same texture, but whereas these were set to closest, which is what you use for pixel art. Here we have it set to cubic, and so you get dots turn into circles, and we get a newsprint. Also, we have this mix shader at the end, mixing between brown and light brown. So what if we wanted lines for etching scale? Here the colours are green, as you can see, and rather than Bayer matrix, we have Bayer line, which is the leftmost pixels of the Bayer matrix thing. And we're coming in from UV rather than an object. And that means that if you want to have if it was done with a pen, if you're doing shading with a pen, you probably get lines like this. What if we wanted full colour? Well, you may notice that here we've got some colours here. If I pop that into there, that's what the colours look like if we're not shading them or texturing them or anything. So here we have the text mix threshold colour. That's an alteration, but these are the same. And of course we need colours to go into material colour, otherwise we won't get colour. This Bayer Matrix RGB is, well, it's the Bayer Matrix, but the red and green channels have been shuffled over 1 pixel in 2 different directions. What if we wanted a full colour newsprint? That is indeed also possible. Same here. That's the same setup as we just looked before. And the this has its own texture. Bayer Matrix RGBA to CMYK, which looks like this. It's a lot bigger than the other ones. And the other thing we've got is we've got CMYK print. You may have noticed that with newsprint, the cyan and the magenta don't look quite the same as they do on the screen. So that's what that does. What if we wanted cross-hatching? Well, why is this colour? Well, actually, if we got rid of this monochroma, you would see that we've got blue doing the horizontal lines and pink doing the vertical lines. I think that's right. If we look at the Bayer grid, and again, we're down to tiny pixels, we get that. And what this is doing is, well, if we see the red channel, that's horizontal, and the green channel is vertical, and the blue is white, and that allows us to get this hot cross-hatching. Once we get it through monochroma, that makes everything black and white again. And what if we wanted a brick shader? This is kind of similar. We've got basically the same thing going off here, but here we're going through a bricks texture feeding in here. And the bricks texture looks like this. We've basically got the same trick of red and green and blue, and it's combining the two together, and then finally we're going through a mix node combining those two colours. What else have we got? We've got wibbly. What are we doing to get wibbly wobbly lines, like you're doing pens but you're creating water, or maybe a wood texture but you're doing it in pen? And here what we're doing is we're messing around with the texture coordinates at the beginning. So rather than just using the Z, which is that, we're mixing it with a noise texture. If we had just the noise texture, we would get this. Slow, and if we add them together we get this thing. So that's quite appealing. And what if we wanted this kind of full colour? Well, here we're not even using a node here. Here we're basically mixing these two textures together, and then we're mixing it into a diffuse shader, but then we're going through a whole series of 8 different colours in order of how brightness they are, and from there we can get this shininess. Thank you. See you soon.
Shift black.